Conway, who's slow, coming up the hill, and all of a sudden, here will come Chris Barrett. He's got himself an angle, and a line, and a way, and a no, and a how, to the outside to take the lead, and he's done it.
Will this be complete, though? Conway backs it up, tries to set it up, coming towards the outer loop this time. Barrett now to the race lead, had to recover from more than 5 seconds back after the two were separated on the pit sequence. Now Conway has one more section to try and find a way back around his teammate.
I wonder if he slowed up to make sure he had enough fuel to make it to the end. That will be the only reason why he dropped so dramatically on the run up through the S's section. But as he takes this rise now, if he's left himself enough on the fuel save, he'll have one place to attack. It's here at the heel of the boot. He looks to the inside. He sends up the inside. Oh, and the two make contact.
Bit of a battle down into Brooklands here, and this is Michael Davies trying to keep Lowendick from getting a second spot from his starting position, up from 8th to 7th, trying to get 6th spot, and he's on the inside. It's a drag race as they come onto the old pit straights, and he's going to have the inside. Teddy probably not going to give this one up as he's got the desired position. He has the higher ground. No, he's not going to have to give it up. Look at sending it in deep. Michael Davies is absolutely monster through there. Do they dare 3 wide? Trepanier thinking about it, then backs out, still carrying on down into the Maggots Beckons quarters, and Michael Davies is going to be able to successfully defend that spot.
It is quite amazing the turn of pace that Waring has gotten. Oh, there's been traffic for McGreevy up ahead, Zachary Brown in the Dog Bear BMW, and that has compromised Osowski, and that's going to be Waring trying to thread the needle on the outside coming into the 90, and at the pincer move with Osowski. He almost gets into Waring on the inside, but just manages to pull it up in time.
They've got to be a little bit careful about trying to be too aggressive going down into China Beach. It looks like Dave's going to try to be later on the brakes, maybe make the move. Barbosa getting a little bit squirrely under braking, and that is all the opportunity that Rodrigo Mies needs. He's going to try to send it around the outside of madness. Here he comes, diving it down side by side with Raymond Day.
As we watch him go down through the corkscrew, back towards the right side, looking towards another amazing finish, taking up that inside, going in to turn 10, he takes the lead. How does he hold it?
Can Prieto hold on after the descent of the rainy curb? Here comes Espes. One final corner for the season. Later on the brakes is Espes. Espes goes for the cut. Prieto parks it on the apex.
As we watch the heart rate monitor almost making contact in front of him, side by side, up through Hawthorne, still nobody willing to give way between them, and through he goes. Kimmo manages to get in, so does Michael de Turk, as Suarez unfortunately dropping down to 13th.
Let's see, though, if Horvath is going to have anything. Tries to send a little bit of a move through the S's. Here he comes. A last-minute dive bomb. That is going to be into the inside line. Holding out to the outside as Horvath tries to get it. They spin. They spin across the line and make contact.
Detroit was tough, but the drivers were tougher. Now that they've reached the other side, their reward is the series' first ever visit to Knockhill. With a few Scottish drivers to call this home, it'll place extra importance on them performing well. Let's see if any of them step up to the challenge as we get ready to watch round 2 of the Absolute Beginners League. And you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Ryan Bauer. Knockhill might be a rather small circuit, but it packs a lot into the lap. Let's head to our track guide to find out more. Welcome to Knockhill Racing Circuit. Opened in 1974, this place has become perhaps the most famous of Scottish racetracks. It sits a little less than an hour north of Edinburgh, and while the stats may make it seem extremely short, it packs a lot of punch within a lap. The 4 main layouts have a mere 2 kilometers, or just over 1 mile in length, and a measly 9 to 10 corners. But no 2 of those turns are alike, and there's an impressive 120 feet of elevation change. Also, a majority of the apexes are taken at medium to high speeds. That makes passing rather tough, but the hairpin at Taylor's is the most likely spot to outbrake someone. Otherwise, you'll just have to wait for a mistake from your rival. Perhaps the aspect that is most unique here is that the circuit can be run clockwise or counterclockwise. Naturally, this changes the nature of some of the corners, but a few things are the same no matter which way you run it. Duffus Dip is a sketchy one in which it can be hard to judge how fast you can take it. And the chicane, which has become notorious for the way touring cars blast over its curbs, requires incredible commitment from the driver and stability in your setup. Speaking of which, expect to set up your car to have to handle the aggressive curves that guard the insides of pretty much every turn. Knockhill has been long requested by the plentiful Scottish racing fans, and with its arrival in the sim, it's sure to garner even more fans around the world now. Well, DJ, I have to admit, I've really enjoyed this track ever since it joined the service, but the question is, will the drivers?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of a 50-50 run here, Joe. The drivers are going to find this a big challenge, as you really have to toe the fine line between aggression over the curbs and not running too far afoul of them, specifically coming up through the chicane and down through Duffus Dip, as well as up through Taylor's. You need to be aggressive on the curbs in order to be able to get a good lap time, but too much aggression over those curbs, and these little skippies are going to find themselves completely sideways, or worse, maybe walking away with a little bit of suspension damage. Now, in terms of overtaking, really the 2 best overtaking opportunities are going to be at the end of the railway straight going down into Taylor's, that tight right-handed hairpin, and maybe a little bit going down into Duffus Dip, although that mainly needs to be a move that gets done before you dive into the corner. One way or another, this is a driver's track. Don't expect for a lot of overtaking out on this series. I anticipate the majority of those passes to either be done in the pits or as a result of mistakes from the drivers in front of you.
That certainly seems to have been the case in the past coverage we've had here, but let's take a look at the championship after the first round, and it is Philip Hammer who lays down the first marker, with Matichinsky and Burns unable to overtake him. Simon Mayer is a little farther back with Terry McGruther, another 2 markers down to round out your top 5. And of course, we have a team standings in this series as well. DJ, where's that one?
Well, Joe, in that team standings, it's 2 Stupid Dogs able to hold out a 4-point advantage over Evolve Motorsport oh, sorry, we've had a little bit of an error on that. There we go. It's 2 Stupid Dogs with a much larger advantage over Evolve Motorsport to the tune of about 20 points. RT Racing back 7 points from Evolve, so within striking distance, but Shake and Bake tied there with RT for 3rd, with AM Racing Team a single point back, so very close there from 2nd, but a good gap up to 1st.
In case anybody missed the first round, that was the team points from the end of last season. And as for today's race details, again, if you're just joining us and have been away from the Absolute Beginners League for a bit, they have upped the distance. It is a 50-minute race now, which means 2 pit stops that they'll need for the fuel. It's still open setup as always, and they still have the 1 spare car if they get damaged. But otherwise, the nature of the strategy has certainly changed in the last season and a half that they've been running here in ABL. Before we get to the qualifying, make sure and check out the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7. Sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions, telemetry, coaching, and more at majorsgarage.com. Or use our special discount code Majors Garage GSRC, or Majors GSRC, gotta get that right, for 10% off. We have a link in the description below that directly applies our offer, so you don't accidentally put my wrong information in there. Definitely go check that out. As we now take a look at the qualifying, here's a new face. Mark Beckhouse is currently leading the timing sheets on the qualifying. Philip Hammer is trying to see if he can best him. And David Burns, for the first time able to run on home soil here in the AVL, is trying desperately to get on the front row.
Yeah, indeed. It's a very, very close margin there. Only about 0.3 of a second separating the top 3 there. And just as small and as twisty as... Oh, Mark Beckhouse there. Very, very close to losing that number 11 machine. Able to hold it back together. But here is David Burns. And as I was saying, because it's such a short track around here, drivers are going to find it very, very difficult to be able to put a lap time down. And it's not like we've seen in the past where you want to be driving around with other cars. The straights just aren't nearly as long around here, so the draft not nearly as important.
And they certainly are sliding them around a lot, as you can see. Also, as we were watching that mistake from Beckhouse, he got overtaken by Hammer by more than 1/10 of a second, which is hard to find around here because the lap is so short. So now we switch over to Burns, who's been slotted to 4th. Terry McGruther gets himself into the top 3 with his 7th lap, rather. And Burns is coming around to finish his latest as he approaches into Taylor's. Let's see, is this one looking fast? He's about even with what his quickest is, and he only needs to make up 1/100th of a second. So this could do it, but he was off the apex there.
Yeah, and that Taylor's corner is so very difficult to be able to get right as there. David Burns off by about 1/10. You called it right, Joe. You really want to try to carry as much speed in and out of the corner as possible as it connects the 2 long straightaways around here. And so you've got to really toe that line. Jump back with Wojciech Podacek as he rides up the chicane there onto the Brabham Straight. And that chicane is going to be absolutely brutal in these cars. I was watching Mark Beckhouse earlier getting almost completely sideways as he threw the car through there. So that's one of those areas, if you've got a lot of bravery, you can make up some good time.
McGruther went up to 2nd and overtook Beckhouse as well. So the top of the order, even with only 5 minutes left, is constantly shifting around now. And our top 5 are separated by 0.3 of a second currently.
Yeah, very, very close at the top, as you'd expect with such a small lap like this. Ooh, that's Wojciech Podacek getting very, very sideways on the run down to Butchers. Drivers just having to really toe that needle there. You can see just how tricky it is to get it all right.
Podacek currently sitting in the 8th position, and how blind some of the corners are as well around this track. Podacek probably feeling just a little bit of slipstream from Simon Mayer in front of him. And Zioso also giving a big toe to Simon in that 23. So Mayer might jump himself up into the first 2 rows here, because he's looking like he is on a fantastic lap. Podacek, in the meantime, is a little slow on his. Mayer crosses, and it's a 54.6. He goes into 2nd place, actually.
Oh, that's a great lap there for Mayer, taking full advantage of the draft to be able to pull himself along. And there you can see just absolutely chucking it into the corner, that rear end hanging around wide. Watch it through here. You can see how sideways they get up through the chicane. Just absolutely feats of bravery around here, Joe, is how you find that little bit of lap time.
And Randall just went up into 2nd now. There are yet still drivers that are figuring out the secrets of this tiny little track. So Mayer gets shuffled down to 3rd. He is not on a quicker one this time through. So maybe he can get another toe from Neptune in front of him, who is just about the right distance up the road. So we hop on board the roll bar of the Diatch driver. And as I said, this one was a slow one. Now he has to put in a better banker lap.
Indeed, he's going to have to try to push his way forward a little bit here as we jump back to JR Hoops as he works his way around the circuit, trying to see if there's anything to be had here in those last couple of seconds. This isn't going to be a good run for JR, but he'll at least be able to get a couple of more in here.
Watching Beckhouse, he just crossed the line of 54.5. That's his best of the evening, and Beckhouse goes back onto the front row. You blink and you'll miss. Drivers constantly swapping around as well as off the track, as you can see. Probably going to be a common sight based on our previous experience here.
Yeah, this is really going to be a race of attrition, a race of minimizing error, I think, Joe. You've really got to be careful here to push those limits just as far as you can. If you step a little bit out of line here, it will throw you way, way off.
Like Zamolo just did there for a bit. So we hop on board with one of the more fancifully painted cars out on the track. I can report that Beckhouse is looking like he might take the pole away because he was 0.2 up. It's back down to 0.1 up. Can the newcomer manage to sneak in with a splash? And it's a 54.537. It's just shy of the pole by 3/100ths.
Absolutely incredibly fine margins here. Really, really impressive stuff from these drivers. I love seeing what it is. I look at this, Joe. The top four separated by 1/10.5. That is infinitesimal.
They are going to be so tightly packed together when this race happens. And on top of it, we've got 30 cars, it looks like, that have shown up, which is going to be plenty to congest this place. So they're going to have to deal with traffic on top of it. This is going to be fascinating to watch as we watch Magruder, who at one point was in second place, has already been shuffled down to 6 here with 1.5 minutes to go. He looks like he's a little bit quicker, 0.2 up on his time. Where will this put him? A 54.655. That's back to fourth.
And Philip Hammer was on the pole, and now it's Mark Beckhouse who's able to pip him by an entire 1/10 of a second. So Beckhouse, the newcomer here, putting down the law.
And that was actually stealing a slipstream off of Magruder, who we were watching, with Hammer giving the slipstream to Terry. And here you said that we weren't going to be as worried or concerned with the slipstream here, but it seems to be making a huge world of difference in the qualifying.
It certainly does. These AVL drivers just absolutely proving me wrong. Big lockup there in front of Giuseppe Tellini. Tellini running the car a little bit wide at the exit of Clark there. That's a tricky corner as well. Not that any of these corners are tricky on this circuit, Joe.
Seen a lot of drivers that aren't looking to improve their time this time by, so I'm guessing they're setting up for the last lap, which many have actually started at this phase. Less than 30 seconds to go now, and coming across soon, guys like Bamber, DeYoung going to be starting that final go at things. This is Philip Hammer that we ride on board with right now, sitting in second place. In fact, I think this is his last lap. We're now down to less than 15 seconds.
We are indeed. Drivers able to finish their hot lap that they are on as we watch the last couple of drivers cross over the line right now. Not seeing an improvement out of them, but there goes the checkered flag.
Sauer improves on his last try. Harris does as well. Giros is now coming across with JR Hoops. Let's see if this will be enough for them. No, Giros does improve, and so does Hoops. Man, the times are just dropping left and right, but Beckham is not one of them. He holds the pole, but it's by a tenuous 0.08 of a second. Hammer has already finished his qualifying, so he's not going to be able to try and challenge him. Burns, though, is on his final lap.
He is indeed, and he's getting a nice little pull from Wojciech Podacek, so that may be able to help him. Podacek looked like he had an off track, so I think this lap will not count for him. Let's see if David Third Degree Burns has anything here. No, he's going to pull it on into the pits.
Looks like nobody else is improving on their time based on what I'm seeing, so I think we might be done here, and most of them have already crossed anyways. So let's head through our starting order here today, and Mark Beckhouse is definitely showing himself to be a man to watch out for with the pole, but Philip Hammer is not too far behind on that front row. Simon Mayer will be in third, followed by David Burns in fourth and Terry Magruder in P5. Jeff Randall, he'll be sixth, followed by Giuseppe Tellini in seventh. Simone Zamolo will be P8 and Wojciech Podacek in ninth, with the top 10 rounded out by Vincent Brame.
JR Hoops will be lining up in P11, followed by Remco Kleiser with Gordon Vandenbergen and Neil Bamber in row 7. Lorenzo Zingaretti is 15th, followed by Benjamin Harris with Josh Brain and Titus DeYoung behind them. Christopher Kirk will line up in 19th, and the Trident, Frederick Neptune, will be 20th.
Ludwig Sauer will be 21st. You've got Christopher Giros, P22, followed by Italo Anzioso in 23rd. Strudelmeister Thomas Kick is 24th today as Nicholas Anderson starts from P25 to his outside. He'll have Klaas Lodane. Then it's Mark Figueres, 27th, Aiden Naylor, 28th, Vladimir Steskial in 29th, and I'm checking to see if Rob Adams is in the session. He is, but he did not set a qualifying time, so it looks like he will grid up from the back if he joins us here today in our 30-car field. And the drivers are indeed starting to line up. The one good thing going for them is that the Scottish weather is behaving today.
It is indeed 70 degrees Fahrenheit out on track, 21 Celsius. So that's almost a little bit chilly here for these drivers. They're going to have to make sure to be a little bit cautious on the first couple of laps, not overuse the tires at all. There is a decent amount of wind, 13 miles an hour coming out of the east there, so they're going to have to be careful not to come around some of the corners too aggressively, as that wind will buffet them a little bit.
Just about have everybody out there getting ready for round 2. 50 minutes of racing here in the Absolute Beginners League, and who will be able to take the maiden victory here at the first Scottish track in iRacing, and the first time for the ABL to visit. Looks like everybody is out there now, and the engines begin to rev as the lights come up, and the green flag is out off the line. It is a decent one for everybody up towards the front as they all start to slot into single file. Going to be tough to try and take it too wide coming up into Duffus Dip, and not many are trying it.
No, everybody being pretty well behaved here as they work their way through Duffus Dip and around on this first lap. Like I said, only 70 degrees on track right now, so I think the drivers know that, and they're not going to try to be too aggressive here early on. Let for the tires to kind of warm in and get up to temperature.
Oof, thankfully, we're making it through the chicane in the back, and you can see some were still side by side. For some reason, Mark Figueres in pit lane already. Not sure if he started it from there, but whatever the case, he is getting close to going a lap down here as the drivers now come through Taylor's hairpin, and it is still Beckhouse leading from the pole. Hammer is not able to challenge him. Instead, he's having to play defense on Mayer.
Yeah, indeed he is. Simon Mayer looking very aggressive. We saw a little bit of a poke out there coming down into Taylor's corner, just trying to get into the head of Philip Hammer to see if there's anything to do there.
Don't look now, but David Burns, who lives just right near this track in the real world, is also still in the top 4, watching with a close eye on Simon Mayer behind him.
Indeed, he is. I think Burns knows this track well enough to know that he needs to just be a little bit cautious here, not try to be too crazy, although they've got to watch out. Mark Beckhouse already pulling out about a half-second advantage. They do not want to let that number 11 car slip away into the distance.
Had our first issues in the chicane. Neptune looks to be involved. I think Thomas Kick potentially, Klaas Lodane, and looks like Aiden Naylor also finding themselves off at the side of the track.
We're going to go back and take a look at that replay. This is the Trident, Frederick Neptune, coming up through the chicane. As I said, just spinning in sympathy there with his teammate.
Yeah, that was Crook, actually. 4 drivers all spinning. Wow, so that's going to be a tricky one coming up and over the crest and over those giant curbs. And unfortunately, a chunk of them were teammates out there, so that was not good news for them. Oh my goodness, we've had a car flip into the railing, and that is Zingaretti. This is an almighty wreck coming through the chicane once again.
That looking like it is the danger zone on track. We ride on board with Lorenzo. You see a little bit of brake lock up in front of him. Driver's trying to go in. He dives it into the corner, carries a lot of good speed out of it, and then this is going to be the danger area. Sees that car off track in front of him, catches it wrong, and catches the car behind him, and that sends him right up into the catch fence.
Wow. that escalated quickly, as they say. And the 64 had to take a tow because he couldn't drive it out of that one. But he does have a spare car. He can get back out there if he's willing to tempt fate after that one. And he will be able to try and collect whatever points possible. I can tell you that Figueres is back out as we're with Simon Mayer, with Burns all over his gearbox currently.
Yeah, indeed. David Burns looking very, very eager to get himself forward as Philip Hammer's been able to close the gap to David Beckhouse in front of him. There you saw a little bit of a poke out from, I believe that was Jeff Randall on Terry Magruder. We ride on board with Magruder right now.
A little bit too far back to try and attack on these two, but he's got a front row seat to the action. Mayer just went slightly defensive. They come back to the racing line, and they are allowed to cross over that pit exit line that is considered the natural racing line here. So they slide down through Duffus Dip. Oh my goodness, he's almost touching the back of that red 23.
He is indeed David Burns in a hurry, which is not something we normally say here in the Absolute Beginners League, but he is looking very, very anxious to try to get forward as that gap between Hammer and Mayer has expanded up to 1.5 seconds. I think Burns knows he needs to get back up to that leading group if he wants to do anything. He's going to have a look to the inside of Taylor's. Here comes Burns.
He's got the nose inside. He outbrakes him into the corner, but makes the apex. He is through. However, he now has 2 seconds to make up to catch up to Beckhouse.
He does indeed. We jump back here. This is Vincent Bream back in the field. The Benelux driver trying to work on Gordon Vandenbergen right ahead of him. You see him poking his nose this way and that.
Someone needs to get out the steel wool a little bit on Vincent Bream's paint scheme, it seems, as they come down through Duffus Dip once again, just staying glued to the back of Vandenbergen. Now through the chicane, launching the cars over those curbs.
Absolutely chucking it in through there. This nice little battle starting to shape up a little bit as we now ride on board. This is Hammer going for the lead.
Tries to get to the inside, but the door is shut by Beckhouse. He's not going to leave the door open for him. And up the main straight, a little bit of a poor exit because of that for Hammer. Drops him about 3/10 behind.
It does indeed, and I'm surprised here. David Burns not exactly looking like he's able to streak away from Simon Mayer to catch up to this battle, as now it does look like that Philip Hammer has been able to close in to the best of his abilities. He's keeping that gap nice and tight.
Yeah, it's still at 2 seconds from Burns to Hammer, but Magruder is trying to see if he can pressure something out of Mayer, and looks like Jeff Randall kind of joining them at the back. We've hopped on board with Terry Magruder, and coming up and over behind him, I can tell you we couldn't see it, but Randall just had a slight off into the gravel. That'll cost him some speed.
Yeah, it will indeed, and that's one of the problems coming through Clark's like that, is you can really get up and over. Jumping back in the field, though, this is Christopher Giros. This is the fight for P20. That's Titus DeYoung and Frederick Neptune right up ahead of him. This is looking very, very good for Giros. He looks like he's got a lot of pace, but he's got to watch out in his 6 because that is Benjamin Harris closing in.
Giros says good run, and he's going to get his nose in there. Oh, and following them through, maybe not, almost running into him. And he somehow manages to keep that from becoming a wreck. But Benjamin Harris was a little too dear on the brakes and just about took out the 36. Back to Magruder with a pass on Meyer. This is into Clark Curve. And off the corner, he's got it done. This has been a boon for David Burns because he has finally said goodbye.
Indeed, he's been able to stretch his legs and move on forward, but that gap's still holding at about 1.9 seconds, so he's still got to try to wheel that car around here to be able to tuck up behind into that draft range that he needs to get to.
That was all kicked off by a mistake by Mayer through the chicane is what set that one off. Ben Harris, in the meantime, back down in 22nd, who last time we saw have to climb over the curb to avoid running into his rivals when he over anticipated what his brakes could handle. This time, that's a lot more single file affair.
Yeah, he doesn't exactly dive it in there, and I've got to give credit to Harris on that to be able to not get a big incident there. So massive kudos as we continue to watch them work their way around here.
Yep, this is our leaders still fighting with one another, trying to see if they can swap those positions around, at least in the case of Hammer. Try and swap those positions around. He's been working on it for some time. Now the question is he stuck, or is this the typical shenanigans that we see here in ABL where he's maybe saving a little bit of fuel?
I think it could be a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, Joe. Right now, they're putting down good pace, so I don't really see a whole lot of impetus for Philip Hammer to want to get himself ahead of Mark Beckhouse. They've been able to actually expand the gap back to David Burns. It's now up to about 2.3 seconds, so there's no real reason that they need to push themselves ahead that hard.
Ooh, Mayer once again struggling a little bit as he has him off out of the chicane and certainly pushes the limits coming up through Clark. He's got to be careful because Jeff Randall is still back there and he could potentially take that spot with another major off like that is breaking down into the hairpin of Taylor's. Mayer looks around the outside, but Magruder says no. He'll get another chance at it. He's got the slipstream. And he's going to look to the inside as we ride on board with Hammer, who decides to back out of it. And we had a pass between Mayer and Magruder, with Simon managing to get back to fourth.
We have indeed, and we're going to go back and take a look at that replay. Here it is coming through Taylor's. You can see the run here that we get. Just trying to push ahead for Mayer. I think he may have wanted to go. There he goes, just down the inside. Simple, easy draft pass, or as easy as a draft pass can be. And there is some right front damage there to Magruder's car, if you see that on the right front wing.
Yeah, I suspect we're going to see a lot of that today as drivers are taking a lot of curb. So I wouldn't be shocked if there were a number of cars that had damaged front wings. The good news is these cars are aero dependent, but not for downforce.
No, not at all. So you don't have all that much bite really coming from the aerodynamics in the front of these wings. And so curb strikes like that cause that front wing damage, it's not going to be nearly as bad. Now, Joe, I was just riding on board with Philip Hammer, thinking a little bit about that fuel-saving strategy that we talked about to maybe see if he was lifting and coasting down into that first corner. I don't think he is. He sounded like he ran that thing right up to the red line. Let's listen in here into this. That's about the normal braking zone that I would anticipate, so I don't think he's doing a whole lot of fuel saving here.
Speaking of fuel saving, Magruder lost another one, this time to Randall. But did he have a mistake? Because Randall was a ways back. I'm checking to see if I missed something. No, this is just straight up pace that the 107 ran him down and has gotten by. My goodness, they slide these things around a lot. It's fun to watch, but oh boy, it's got to be scary in the cockpit.
Yeah, indeed, Joe. I can't imagine slinging these skippies around there like that. As we focus in here, I believe that is Josh Brain. Sorry, it's the same paint scheme as David Burns. I was confused there for a second. This is the battle back for 14th. That's Ludwig Sauer right up ahead of him.
Exactly, and it's a similar paint scheme as well for our leaders. So I was kind of in the same boat trying to figure out who are we looking at as we come onto the front stretch. And speaking of the leaders, we've got Aiden Naylor, the next one in front of him, and that is not for position.
No, it is not. Aiden back in 25th position. He has lapped traffic, so let's see how the leaders are able to dispatch with him here as they work their way down into McIntyre.
Ooh, they're not catching him in a good spot at all, and he's not exactly pulling over. Granted, this is not a place where you can. This could be a spot. He's just not really committing to anything, and this is holding up Beckhouse. Something fierce. Now he tries to pull off as Beckhouse was trying to go there too. That slowed him up. Does Philip Hammer try to make it 3 wide? No, he does not. He will stay put.
He'll stay back in line, able to get by Naylor there. The next car they have up the road is Italio and Zosio, so a good ways up. Not a lot of traffic yet. I do anticipate they'll catch him up very quickly.
It's going to be a conveyor belt soon enough, I'm sure. And we haven't hit the first pit stops yet either. And that could be a bit of a toss-up, I'm sure. Trying to find an open space in traffic, it could be a bit of a task for the drivers alone. And they're certainly digging a lot of dirt up and putting it back on the track as they clip some of the gravel traps around the exits of the corners. This is Philip Hammer you see in the red, black, and white, and the orange and blue. Mark Beckhouse, this is first and second since the drop of the green.
Indeed, and they've been really, really able to gap David Burns there. Burns sitting about 3.3 seconds behind them, so he just doesn't quite have the speed to be able to catch up as Hammer really putting it down here, doing a great job of keeping up behind Beckhouse and keeping him honest.
He's got a good toe once again. So we ride inside the roll hoop, and I don't think this is going to be long enough, though. Yep, he's got to back out of it by the time they hit Duffus Dip. There is the lap comparison between the pair of them, just back and forth every lap just about.
Yeah, really and truly, it is a seesaw of lap times here, just going back and forth, nothing really splitting these two drivers.
McGruder's been having a bad day. He just had an off, lost 2 positions and 1 straight, might lose a 3rd because Potacek is chasing him. There they are, coming down into Clark, looking to the inside, and McGruder's had enough of this. He shuts the door hard.
Yeah, shuts it very, very forcefully on Potacek. As we go back to check out the replay, this is all sort of kicked off here by Giuseppe Tellini being aggressive with McGruder going into Duffus Dip, and the way that this track flows, there you can see the off from McGruder. If you get offline through Duffus, that can throw you off all the way through the chicane.
Barely had space to get back in there, and Potacek's finally able to get by him on the front stretch now. As we come back live, McGruder, who is at one point in the top 3, has fallen to 9th. It's not been his day.
No, it certainly has not, as you just see the momentum shifts that can really happen here around Knock Hill as we jump back up with the leaders. Now, remember I said that they were going to catch up with Enzosio here soon. Well, they've caught him now. That is 24th up ahead, so some more lap traffic.
So halfway point in this race is 25, and most times we don't expect drivers to be able to one stop this series with the extra 10 minutes they added. Granted, it is a very short track, so you never know, but this is going to be fascinating to watch to see who blinks first amongst them, especially with this traffic, and if they can find themselves something. Speaking of which, David Burns has decided to be one of those drivers to play an experiment. He is in the lane taking fuel. He's joined by Terry McGruder, and Tellini just popped in like he took a tow. What happened to him? Oh no, Tellini had a wreck with Aiden Naylor, and that is what sent him in. And Potacek, Potacek slammed into him as well, I'm seeing on my replay. So a couple of mid-pack drivers taken out one go.
You absolutely hate to see that, Joe, as we watch here some drivers just coming to rest in their pit stall. It's a very tricky pit to find your box in. But let's go back and check out that replay of what happened with Tellini and Naylor.
And, miscommunication with Naylor once again. He's not been the greatest in lapping situations, and he was just kind of prone across the track as Potacek approached. I don't know. Potacek had plenty of time to see this coming, though. Let's see. Reacted just way too late. Maybe he thought the car was going to spin off to the inside or something, and next thing he knew, it was just sitting across the track, and it was too late for him. Meanwhile, David Burns, by the way, he came out in completely clear air. Now, that said, he was in clear air before, even though he was leading along Mayer. So not a great change, but good news for him if Beckhouse and Hammer do come in and pit and find themselves stuck in a bit of traffic.
My sentiments exactly. He really timed this out well, Joe. And I was going to say before we had that accident kind of pop off on us that Burns had to be a little bit careful because he didn't want to run the risk of coming out in traffic because that would just slow him down further. But he clearly had the relative, had the spotter to be able to tell him that there was a nice clear gap to be able to come out in. And that really allowed him to be able to just now put the pedal down, run his own race here a little bit. As we watch Hammer still just hounding Beckhouse, but not really going too aggressive, not going for a massive overtake.
It's Christopher Crook in front of them. He recently had it off, and he's going to have another one, but that'll make an easy job for the leaders to go by. In fact, Crook's going to pit on top of it with the situation he's in, so that gets out of their way. Back to Neptune in the meantime in 12th. This is the fight for 11th with Christopher Giros in front of him. Terry McGruther, who has already taken his stop, is the only one of these three that have taken their pit stop. So even though this is for position, he is off strategy with these two teammates.
Indeed, he is. So they're going to have to see here if McGruther's able to recover a little bit. Once you get into a good rhythm here at Knockhill, you can find yourself just eking away the lap times. But if you get off cycle a little bit, as McGruther's going to try to make that move to the inside of the 666, I think he may have poked out of the draft a little early.
And ahead of these guys as this battle carries on down into Duffus Dip. There's also a battle between Burns and Mayer going on at the exit of pit lane, and it looks like Burns came out ahead, but just barely. The timing was oh so tight between himself and the 23.
Very, very tight, Joe, and I'm really frankly surprised here by David Burns' pace. He was ahead of Mayer going into the pit stop cycle, and I would have thought being able to go out and run in clear air, he would have been able to get clear of him, but there you can see just barely nipping ahead.
Whew, had to take some of the runoff there on the outside to keep the car on the track with that alternate line. Hoops and Vandenbergen are also pitting in as we jump back to Philip Hammer. Still within 0.3 of a second. He's got to have saved some fuel out here, I would think, with how close he's been running behind him. And Klaas Lodane is the next one up.
Indeed, next one up on the list for these drivers to try to get by, but that's going to be helped by two of them coming down pit lane.
Lodane pits and our leader pits, but Hammer stays out. So Beckhouse is going to be the first amongst those two to take his stop as we come back to Mayer once again. These two shouldn't be a factor, we don't think, because they pitted about 5 seconds behind the leaders when they affected their strategy. Into Taylor's, and nothing from Mayer this time. Oh, but he nearly gets the back of him as he exits the corner. That's going to be a nice slipstream up the front stretch.
It is indeed, but did that checkup cost him the opportunity to attack coming out of Taylor's? He's got it. He's backing off a little bit. He doesn't want to go for the move going down into Duffus Dip.
Still has more than half the race left to go. There's going to be opportunities. He's clearly got pace to stick with him. And Philip Hammer does, yes, pit this time. So he responds to Beckhouse with about 28 minutes left. This must be the end of the pit window, I think, because he and Nick Anderson are the only other two that needed to come in.
Yeah, indeed. So mark that down there. About 20 minutes is as far as these guys will be able to go. There you see Beckhouse getting held up a little bit by, I believe that was Aiden Naylor there, that he works his way around. Is that going to cost him any time as Hammer is moving now? Let's see how they'll come out.
Hammer's rolling. Beckhouse has got his speed up, but Hammer is through. He pips him. He's got the track position now. It was slightly faster in the pit stall, but I think it was down to that lap traffic that we saw Beckhouse get caught up in.
Indeed it was, and crucially, Hammer was able to get out and put Nicholas Anderson in between himself and Mark Beckhouse. There you can see Beckhouse finally able to get around Anderson, but not before it's cost him a couple of tenths of a second, Joe. That gap now up to 1.8.
And that's up from 2 to 3/10 of a second for pretty much the entire first 20 minutes in this race. Vandenbergen, as we look at the battle for 8th position, Zamolo leading this train, Hoops in front of him, then Vandenbergen, who we were riding on board with, and Zingaretti is a lap down behind them. along the railway straight and into Taylor's. This could be something for Hoops. A little bit defensive there from Simone. And, oh, he goes deep into the corner. He could open up the door. He manages to get the shot off of it somehow and keeps Hoops behind.
Very much amazed at that move, as that is one of the Italians pulling back in. By the way, the lead has stabilized out to about 2 seconds. Here comes Hoops. Is he going to try to go for an overtake? No, he's going to stay in line.
So they come down into McIntyre. Falls back just slightly. Backing off, giving some room to Zamolo. Up and over the chicane once again. Taking a lot of curb to that inside, but managing it well. Now through Clark. We've seen a lot of drivers go wide just like that as Zamolo drags his wheels through the gravel. Hoops knows he's quicker. He's going to go to the inside. Not much of a defense from Simone this time. Is he going to break as deep as he did last time into the hairpin? No. He's going to try and cut back underneath and see if he could pull the over-under. He just about does, but it's not done. He's got to use this speed to take it to him into the first turn. Side by side they go.
It's not over yet. It's going to be Zamolo on the preferred line. Can Hoops outbreak him? No. Hoops is going to choose discretion as the better part of valor and back off.
And somehow Simone keeps hold of the car as it goes sideways into McIntyre. This is all just for 8th place as well, we need to remind you. So this is a battle for good points, but they're acting like this is last lap for the lead.
They are indeed, and watch the hands here from Simone Zamolo. Absolutely remarkable job to keep this car pointed the right way. There you can see it. Whoa!
Curb definitely upset the car, it looked like, coming down through the second part of Duffus Dip. And great job holding on to that there, Simone Zamolo, but you still got to make another pit stop and 25 more minutes. And in fact, it's starting to look like Hoops could have another shot. Nope, he's going to lift this time into that first turn. Critically, our leaders have spread apart. Hammer's actually now 2.4 seconds ahead of Beckhouse, and he's got yet more traffic that he's going through. It definitely seems like the 60 is doing a better job dealing with the lapping cars.
Yeah, indeed he is, and part of that is just luck of the draw of where he's been able to catch everybody, and part of it is that he's had a little bit of aggression and just being willing to stick his nose down into the corner to really chuck it on in there to make it work.
Whoa, speaking of chucking it in there, as Hoops and Zamolo go at it again. Zamolo to the outside, Hoops to the inside. We ride on board with JR, and he is going to lose a little speed up this front stretch, a steep hill. And in fact, he lifts out of it and lets him back through.
JR Hoops clearly has more speed here than Simone Zamolo, but he is just trying to do everything he can do to get by. When this is another guy that would love to get by. This is Simon Mayer here, continuing to ride behind David Third Degree Burns, just trying to see if there's anything to have to get by him. But Burns has done a great job, leaves the door open a little bit at the apex. This could be a run for Mayer.
As David Burns behind him watches his mirrors, just about a car length between them. Does Simon actually go for it? No, he is going to back out and don't need to go to it. Well, actually, maybe we do need to go to it, because I was going to say Zamolo and Hoops swap positions, but Vandenbergen and Hoops nearly swapped around as well.
Indeed, they did. Zamolo trying to break the draft a little bit there, going down the main straightaway. I think JR Hoops has gotten a little bit in his head.
But now, as we watch on board with Simon Mayer, he's going to be able to make good on that run, and he is going to manage to get third away. A little bit of wheels in the dirt for David Burns. Did him in that time. I got a feeling, though, this battle's going to keep going until the end of this race.
I do too. The only thing that may separate them out a little bit will be this next round of pit stops that we anticipate firing off here in about 10 minutes time.
Yeah, this second one. Whoa! My goodness, down into Taylor's. This is getting a little spicy. If they're not careful, they're going to run into each other, and then somebody's going to be crying. unfortunately, as Vandenbergen does manage to pull ahead of Hoops, who looks to be struggling slightly in the second stint.
Yeah, he just looks like he is overdriving the car a little bit, pushing to the extremes. And in these skippies especially, Joe, they are a trainer car. Speaking of pushing to the extremes, that was Zamolo way off into the kitty litter. You don't want to be aggressive with the wheel. You want to let the car sort of float through the corners. That overuse of the tires, it's just going to scrub speed. It's not actually going to gain you anything.
Zamolo once again went a little too far. Vandenbergen now has the chance to get his second position up into 8th. And they're going to be dead even on the brakes into the corner on the inside, trying to get the launch off. Vandenbergen does well, but not as well as Zamolo. The drag race continues. And even though he's got the inside, does Gordon stick with it into the first turn? It looks like he might. No, he gives a lift.
Simone Zamolo just able to get the best launch out of Taylor's that really we've seen of anybody. He has been able to hold off both Vandenbergen and JR Hoops for multiple laps now. It's a really impressive run.
You can never get tired of watching these cars fly over that chicane. I've heard some people compare it to the corkscrew in reverse at times. And down the railway straight, Vandenbergen close again, not as close as last time though. Zamolo gave a tiny little bit of defense and then came back to the racing line.
Ooh, and that was very sideways there for Vandenbergen. As you see, I think the braking zone of Zamolo just caught him a little bit off guard. That car almost fully sideways as he goes in. Again, Zamolo just doing a little bit of a fade there down the straight, trying to break a little bit of the draft if at all possible.
None of these guys really have been able to break that draft at all. Vincent Brame becoming the 4th amongst them, or not missing anything with the lead. They're still at 2.2, although I will say it seems like Beckhouse has stopped that distance increasing. But David Burns, again, this is special impetus for him to manage to get this podium. I gotta think that he wants to at least stay ahead of Mayer if he can't take the win today, because this is his home track almost quite literally. He lives down the road from this place.
Indeed, he does. So very much wants to try to get up there and get past Simon Mayer again if he can. He may go into classic David Burns mode here and just tuck up behind, maybe do a little bit of fuel saving, see if he can eke out a little bit more time.
And to top things off, they've got Kick, De Jong, and Zingaretti, all lapped cars in front of them. One's going to pull off, two's going to pull off. Thought for a second Simon was going to get boxed in there accidentally and let them through. Thankfully, no interruption there, and now all they have to do is see Kick by.
Indeed, and it looks like they'll be able to get him on the straightaways there. You see him pulling off to the side, and Simon Mayer saying, please give me some of that draft as we do this. And you can see them all just following in the tire tracks there of Kick.
But he doesn't let them both through. That's not gonna sit well with David Burns here, and it is costing him. It is costing him a lot. There's no place to go by here, and finally, he is able to drop Kick.
He is indeed, as they work. Oh, big wiggle there out of the back for Thomas Kick.
Okay, well, now they got to come back as we saw Kick go way off there in the background for a second. Back to Vandenbergen instead. Zamolo is in front of him, holding 7th place. Car squirming off the track in front. That's the lap car of Christopher Crook.
Indeed it is. If you look pretty much anywhere on track, you're going to be involved in a lap traffic battle, and it's going to be making these drivers a little bit tentative, I think, when this next cycle of pit stops kicks in. We should be within that range. Remember, we saw these drivers go about 20 minutes in. That's Crook. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but letting that train on by. But remember, you do not want to be pitting in lap traffic, and Crook going to be the first of our takers to come down for the second stop.
The correction on that, Christopher Giros has already been in and out on what I believe is a scheduled stop this last lap. He sits in 16th. Not a bad showing for him, since now there's a bunch of cars that are going to have to stop ahead of him. He should get that back rather quickly. Burns closing back in. He's got it down to 0.7 of a second on Mayer. Once he gets to the back of him, does he then maybe try and pit in, see if he can jump him in pit lane instead? Looks like Neptune is the next one.
All right, so the Trident taking the pull to go in there. I like this from Burns as you see Mayer kind of going back and forth there a little bit, trying to break that draft. Burns not biting to it, not wanting to scrub any speed, just keeping that car pointed ahead as, oh, this is Zamolo and Vandenbergen.
Once again, side by side as they let a few of the other cars pit in. J.R. Hoop's going to abandon them when he sees that battle erupting. And to the inside, Zamolo chucks it down into Duff's dip, but it almost looks like Vandenbergen maybe gave that one up.
Yeah, I think Vandenbergen didn't want to go. We've seen a lot of drivers be very, very tentative down into Duffus. They don't want to take that too wide. The preferred overtaking opportunity being right there into Taylor's. A little bit of a lockup from Mayer. Here comes Burns.
A big bobble coming through Taylor's, and Mayer is now, once again, David Burns pulling back in behind him. He's got to be saving fuel then if he's not going to take a move like that.
Yeah, that is the only explanation that I can really think of, Joe. That is the only reason why I would think that Burns would be saving at this point and not wanting to get himself forward. He may just be looking at the gaps a little bit. He can feed himself out potentially behind 11th place Benjamin Harris, who's now bumped up to 9th courtesy of pit stops. And maybe that'll be a spot for him.
Speaking of pit stops, J.R. Hoops is the highest driver to have pitted right now. He sits in 10th place. We've been watching him battling with Zamolo and Vandenbergen for much of this event. Back to where we saw the bobble last time for Mayer. This time, much more clean. And he immediately goes defensive, and Burns says, that's fine, I'm pitting in anyways.
All right, so David Burns looking for that gap in traffic. He's going to hope to come out now behind Josh Brain. That is going to be the car, I think, the gap that he's going to be looking for.
Managing to get to the inside. My goodness, this battle is something else to witness. Vandenbergen still can't get the launch off the corner, so Zamolo will hold the advantage. 15 minutes left to go, and they just came out ahead of David Burns, which means he might get held up here.
Yeah, that didn't exactly work out the way I think David would have liked it to. I think he wanted to get past ahead of them if he could, as Philip Hammer sets the fastest lap of the race. That gap between first and second growing up to about 3.6.
Yep, he's definitely put the hammer down now, and Beckhouse has got to try and respond. There could be a slight swap around if Hammer took just a little bit less on fuel and that now needs to take more on this second stop. Something we haven't referred to a lot as we ride on board with Beckhouse. He could have a slightly shorter stop here for the second go of it, and that will feed some time back. But that's not going to be enough if it is about, let's see, half a second difference between them.
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to be nearly enough. He has just got to put in stonking laps to be able to try to catch back up or pray that Philip Hammer has a problem.
Looking to see if we get any other takers in pit lane. Burns took over for the highest driver to have pitted. Pleiser, who has just pitted himself, is back out in 9th. He's been very quiet today, the 117. Started this race in 5th. And based on this, I think he's going to pretty much finish there, but it's going to be an effective and consistent run. And Jeff Randall has just pitted as well.
All right, so all of these pit stops really starting to fire off here. Let's see if anybody from this group decides to come in. I know David Burns is going to be praying that they do, but they do not.
They stay out. We're still missing about half the drivers. In about 20 minutes, we should see most of them pit with about 10 to 8 minutes left at the absolute maximum, and then the pit window closes. And Zamolo just exited the pits.
And that's contact with Aiden Naylor. That's Zamolo out.
Oh, no. And that was, yeah, Naylor was ahead of him. Vandenbergen was behind him. And David Burns narrowly escaped it. Watch this.
So this is riding on board with David Burns here. This is going to be coming up in a little bit. So we're going to let this play out. You can see Burns starting to close up to the back of Vandenbergen right there. That's Naylor. 3 cars up the road, Zamolo in between.
And yeah, he was already being held up here. This is not good news for him. So he's not liking this situation at all. Naylor's been in the wars with some lapping cars previously, but Zamolo might not be aware of that. And as he goes a little slow in a McIntyre, just trips up, collects at least 2 of the cars, and somehow squeaking through a gap. David Burns avoids it, but that may have cost him 3rd place.
Yeah, it may have indeed, him falling down the field there. You can see the outboard. Zamolo just not anticipating Naylor getting off into the grass there like that, and that completely ruining his race.
Shame after how great the battle was going between himself and Vandenbergen and Hoops, and David Burns is still out there behind Vandenbergen, who is not pitting in, and Mayer did. Mayer's just coming out. Where is Burns going to be in relation? Burns is going to be ahead of him by a long margin.
Indeed, a massive margin there. So my predictions of that, of Burns being held up, clearly not true. Simon Mayer behind the 8 ball now.
And you know why? A 4-second faster stop for Burns than Mayer. The master of fuel saving strikes again, so all of our naysaying were not even in a thought in his brain, I think, there.
No, not at all. David Burns, so you can see him streak going by Simon Mayer. That's Josh Brain as well separating them, but Brain still owes us a pit stop.
Hammer does, Beckhouse does, Vandenbergen needs to pit in, and it looks like Ben Harris. Thomas Kick just ducked into pit lane. We need Nick Anderson in, and Vandenbergen just entered, letting free our fellow Scot here, David Burns, allowing him to race on, looking at a potential podium. He's got about a second back to Brain, but again, Brain needs to stop. So what is it back to Mayer? About 2.5 seconds, it looks like?
I think that's about right. And look, as we ride on board with Philip Hammer, he has got a massive lead, although Mark Beckhouse has just come down pit lane. But Philip Hammer still wheeling that car around. See how much he is chucking it through the chicane.
It was 16 seconds last time for Beckhouse. This time, 11 seconds. For comparison, Burns ran a 12.4. So that's shorter than even a man who we know is very good on fuel. So either Beckhouse has been saving, or he is going to be short.
All right, so we may have a little bit of a storyline to follow here, as Hammer's going to stay out for another lap, opting not to come down pit lane. He's going to try to stretch that advantage as much as possible to Mark Beckhouse.
9 minutes left to go on the clock, and all of 2 or 3 drivers that need to finish up their strategy for us to have a clear picture on how this will go. Frederick Neptune, who we ride on board with, has been chasing his teammate Giros, and Giros has gone up from 22nd, so this has been an impressive climb for him, whereas Neptune from 20th to 13th here, so just about as impressive, but his teammate has one-upped him by a couple positions.
Indeed he has, as we see Nicholas Anderson and Josh Brain opting to come down pit lane, so that's going to put Simon Mayer directly behind David Burns here at this point, but that gap is still at about 2.5 seconds, so a lot of room to make up. About the same distance back for Jeff Randall to try to catch in. We will now ride on board with the Trident himself, Frederick Neptune, as he works his way around trying to catch in on the back of Christopher Giros, who's less than a second ahead.
And I can report that Hammer has pitted in, so our leader finally taking his last splash of fuel. Beckhouse is just coming onto the pit straight right now, and Hammer, an even shorter stop at 9.7 seconds.
Wow, all right, so that means that we are either going to have some massive fuel problems here at the end for your 2 leaders, or David Burns maybe isn't as good on that right foot as we give him credit for.
If he is as good, and these 2 did short fuel it, what a fairy tale it would be for the 125 to suddenly find himself in victory lane after riding around in third and fourth this entire time. Oh my goodness, we are set up for a good one here. Coming up over the hill with Gyros being chased by Neptune. He's got just a few more laps to try and overtake his teammate and put them even on positions gained.
He is, and it really looks like here that Frederick's just got a lot more speed to be able to try to close in on him. He's really been able to bring that gap down.
He's within the slipstream. And I can report that Zamolo is back out on track after using his spare car. So the 58 running, but he's now in 13th behind these two. Hopping on board, looking over the shoulder of Frederick Neptune, the Scandinavian. Playing patient for now, but will he stay patient?
That is really and truly the question here. It is his teammate, so he doesn't want to get too crazy in terms of trying to get his way forward there. But rest assured that racer's instinct will kick in.
Watching the lap times of Hammer in case he is having to go slow to save fuel and only now realizes the errors of his ways. But this last lap, still quick for him, 54.3. So he's taken this pretty fine as it sits. Doesn't show any indications that he thinks he may have short-fueled it a bit. Beckhouse in second, also running a 54.3 that time across, just about matching each other's pace.
Yeah, I'm not hearing a lot of lifting and coasting out of these drivers, so that tells me that both Beckhouse and Hammer think they've got enough to make it to the end, and there's no real concerns about that fuel number. So we'll have to see how that plays out, Joe, or if it comes back to bite them.
And crossing fingers for fans of those two that they did put enough in. 5.5 minutes left now. Gyros still has not been attacked. Is this flying formation potentially, maybe? Is this team trying to just collect what points they can, especially considering we know two of their teammates, and I think it was it these two actually that spun off on lap 2 through the chicane? I'm trying to recall here in my notes.
It was 3 out of the 4 cars for this team spun off, so yeah, it may be a little bit of formation flying, just hoping to pick back up from a good day.
And just outside of the top 10 is not too shabby, especially considering how far back they started. So, yeah, maybe just trying to consolidate this. They've got 7 seconds up to Brame, so there's really no point in hoping they can overtake him. Back to Philip Hammer. And the gap has not exactly gone down, at least not by a significant amount, which it would need to at this stage to make any sort of difference out there. And another 54.4 for Hammer. Beckhouse 54.4. Once again, just matching one another. And to give you an idea of the pace that they are running, it's 17 seconds down to David Burns. That's in a 55-second lap around here, which means that a good portion of the lap is between second and third.
Yeah, that's really remarkable. And indeed, right now, as I look at it, you could see...
Holy cow, did you just see that catch on screen, though? My goodness, was that a Beckhouse that we saw trying to save the car? It was. Can we get an onboard with the 11?
This may be the most impressive bit of driving we've seen all day here, Joe. Watch him as he brings his way up through Clark's, through the chicane here. Coming up. Oh!
Full lock. Arms crossed up. And he still saved it with his left rear in the dirt. Watch this.
Brings it up. There it is, that into the dirt. My goodness gracious.
Well, he may have saved a second place with that performance, but it cost him some time. 7 seconds now up to Philip Hammer. Still running good lap times. In fact, that was a personal best for Hammer. Is that the fastest lap of the race? Yes, it was. 60 is taken off now. There is no signs of fuel saving whatsoever. I think we are good for our leaders, and he is just coming across the line in a moment to take, I think, 3 to go here. And ahead of him, we were just watching the battle between Von den Bergen and Brain there for a moment. We were riding on board with Gordon. There they are once again.
Yeah, indeed, Gordon Von den Bergen just trying to eke his way forward up into that top 10 a little bit more. Josh Brain, remember, took a later pit stop than most of the other drivers around him. So that clearly paid out for him, as Brain was only stationary in the box about 10 seconds long, not nearly as quick as Philip Hammer, but that fuel saving that he was able to do stretching that second stint out certainly helped him.
Okay, not too much longer that he's got to survive this one. Coming up around Taylor's, big lockup on the way in there as Hoops, Brain, and Von den Bergen are trying to settle out 7th place. Back to Philip Hammer once again, crossing the line. And yeah, I believe this is going to be 3 to go.
Indeed it will. Whew, that was a big jump there, almost fully off the ground, coming over Duffus. Got to give this to Philip Hammer. He is not letting up on the hustle.
Speaking of hustle, Simon Mayer still within about 2 seconds of David Burns, so he's got to watch out here. And they have a lapped car between them. We've hopped on board, you can see, but that will be no more. And that car has been in between them for a little bit now. So this is good news for Mayer. He doesn't have to worry about having to overtake in an awkward way and lose time, but he's got to watch out how much he is sliding this car, dear Lord.
Yeah, he is really doing it. And with a full 50-minute race, Joe, we haven't really talked about it. Mayer around catches the car.
Oh, drivers just pushing things to their limit out here. And that cost Mayer enough that that might be good night to a podium, because it's 5 seconds between himself and Burns. And Randall's starting to catch him. It's 1.5 seconds. And once again, we see a driver lock it up, cross the arms up, and catch it.
We're seeing a lot of that here today, Joe, and it is very intense to see. Jeff Randall may get a little bit interested in the back of Simon Mayer if we see another incident like that.
Well, Philip Hammer is coming around, and he's going to get the white flag this time by. And he's approaching the back of that battle between Von den Bergen, Brain, and Hoops. Brain and Hoops much closer to one another, but he won't catch them. Oh, and Von den Bergen's having to pit. He's shy on fuel. Oh, no. That was going to be a top 10 for him if he hadn't have done that, as Philip Hammer continues on with the white flag and watching to see where Von den Bergen winds up. Little splash and dash and rolling once again.
Indeed, just that little bit of fuel put back into the car. It looks like that's going to put him back down into 12th place, I believe.
Gutting. And won't be able to finish on the lead lap. In fact, only 8 cars will out here with the pace that the leaders have been running. Onto the railway straight for one last time for Philip Hammer with a handy 8-second lead. The newcomer Beckhouse showed him that he needs to watch out for him. But in the end, Philip Hammer did not need to fret too much after strategy played itself out, because he is going to take the first ever victory here at Knock Hill in the Absolute Beginners League. Beckhouse gets second place, and David Burns still has a little ways to go, 21 seconds up to Mark Beckhouse currently. He is looking for a podium, his first time ever here in the ABL at Knock Hill, as we watch a fight behind him. But here he is, the 125. This has got to be some celebrations for David Burns with a podium at his home track.
Indeed, good run there as we watch his teammate Josh Brain trying to come in on the inside there of Remco, or JR Hoops. Is he going to be able to pull it off? It's going to be a sprint to the line.
Oh, just wheel spin. The car lifted off the ground in that change of elevation, and that helped Hoops pull by. He takes 7th, Brain in 8th. Last one on the lead lap. That's going to take us to a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around.
Is that trouble for Conway? Conway, who's slow, coming up the hill, and all of a sudden, here will come Chris Barrett. He's got himself an angle, and a line, and a way, and a no, and a how to the outside to take the lead, and he's done it.
Will this be complete though? Conway backs it up, tries to set it up, coming towards the outer loop this time. Barrett now to the race lead, had to recover from more than 5 seconds back after the two were separated on the pit sequence. Now Conway has one more section to try and find a way back around his teammate.
I wonder if he slowed up to make sure he had enough fuel to make it to the end. That will be the only reason why he dropped so dramatically on the run up through the S's section. But as he takes this rise now, if he's left himself enough on the fuel save, he'll have one place to attack. It's here at the heel of the boot. He looks to the inside. He sends up the inside. Oh, and the two make contact.
Bit of a battle down into Brooklands here. And this is Michael Davies trying to keep Lowendick from getting a second spot from his starting position, up from 8th to 7th, trying to get 6th spot. And he's on the inside. It's a drag race as they come onto the old pit straights. And he's going to have the inside. Teddy probably not going to give this one up as he's got the desired position. He has the higher ground. No, he's not going to have to give it up. Look at sending it in deep. Michael Davies is absolutely monster through there. Do they dare 3 wide? Trepanier thinking about it, then backs out, still carrying on down into the Maggots Beckons quarters, and Michael Davies is going to be able to successfully defend that spot.
It is quite amazing the turn of pace that Waring has gotten. Oh, there's been traffic for McGreevy up ahead, Zachary Brown in the Dog Bear BMW, and that has compromised Osowski, and that's going to be Waring trying to thread the needle on the outside coming into the 90, and at the pincer move with Osowski, he almost gets into Waring on the inside, but just manages to pull it up in time.
They've got to be a little bit careful about trying to be too aggressive going down into China Beach. It looks like Day's going to try to be later on the brakes, maybe make the move. Barbosa getting a little bit squirrely under braking, and that is all the opportunity that Rodrigo Mies needs. He's going to try to send it around the outside of madness. Here he comes, diving it down side by side with Raymond Day.
As we watch him go down through the corkscrew, back towards the right side, looking towards another amazing finish, taking up that inside, going into turn 10. He takes the lead. How does he hold it?
Can Prieto hold on after the descent of the rainy curb? Here comes Espez. One final corner for the season. Later on the brakes is Espez. Espez goes for the cut. Prieto parks it on the apex.
As we watch the heart rate monitor almost making contact in front of him, side by side, up through Hawthorne. Still nobody willing to give way between them, and through he goes. Kimmo manages to get in, so does Michael de Turk, as Suarez unfortunately dropping down to 13th.
Let's see, though, if Horvath is going to have anything. Tries to send a little bit of a move up through the S's. Here he comes. A last-minute dive bomb. That is going to be into the inside line. Holding out to the outside as Horvath tries to get it. They spin. They spin across the line and make contact.
Welcome back to Knock Hill. As the Absolute Beginners League held its first ever round at this track, it was Philip Hammer who made it back-to-back wins to start the season against Mark Beckhouse, who at first looked like he had the pace on him, but the pole sitter just could not keep up and lost it in the pit stops. David Burns behind them managed to get onto the podium on his home track, and I'm sure he is absolutely celebrating that one. Here from third place, Simon Mayer fought him much of the way, but he settled for fourth. It's Jeff Randall with a top 5, followed by Remco Plajger in 6th position. After that, J.R. Hoops with a nice 7th, followed by Josh Brain in 8th. Vincent Brame was our first car lap down in 9th, and Christopher Giros rounded out your top 10.
Coming home in 11th, it was the Trident Frederick Neptune, followed by Gordon Vandenbergen with Simone Zamolo in 13th and Benjamin Harris 14th. Titus de Jong was 15th, followed by Thomas Kick, who was the last car a lap down. Nicholas Anderson 2 laps down, along with Lorenzo Zingaretti, Klaus Loden, and Italio Anzioso.
In 21st, it's Christopher Crook with Terry McGruther in at 22nd. This is getting into our DNFs, unfortunately. Naylor 23rd and Tellini 24th. The drivers that didn't see much of the race, like Podacek, Zauer, Adams, Bamber, Figueres, and Steskal, was a did not start today. It looks like we've got our third place finisher, David Burns, ready to talk to us. And I have to ask David, is there going to be some tartan on the car to celebrate after this?
I don't know. My partner thinks I should have been first considering it's my track, but I said no, there was no chance in that race. Just too fast. There's no chance. Oh, that was a fun race, though. Really good.
I have to admit, though, we thought that you and Mayer were going to have to fight that out pretty hard, and then the pit stops came, and the old David Burns came back, and you jumped him with a very fast stop. Did you know this whole time you were going to be able to gap him that way?
It was hard to judge because Simon's pace, it was quite erratic at the start. So I thought I'm going to be able to leave him. And then he got more pace back and then he caught up to me. And I thought, well, we'll see where he is in the first pit stop. I apologized to him for the first pit exit because he came out the pit and I tried to make it through turn one. It got a little hairy. So apologies to Simon. Like my car was all over the shop. I tried my best to jump him in the pit. It was the only chance I had and it worked out quite well. I was a little close on the fuel though. Very close to running out.
Well, I know you said your partner kind of expected more, but you personally, is this satisfactory to kick things off at your home track with a podium?
I'm quite happy considering my practice. The times I hit weren't as quick as what I hit in the race. I did a 54.5 and I wasn't doing that in solo. So yes, I'm quite happy with that. Having said that, there's a part of me thinks if Simon hadn't lost the lead, I might have been able to hold on in the draft, but I don't know. That's hearsay. You know, that's one of those things.
Yeah, always difficult to figure out. Well, while we got you then, is there anybody that you want to thank before we go?
Yourselves, as always, everybody for doing quite a good job. But I also want, not so much want to thank, I want to check on the German league because apparently they do a drinking game every time you guys say the word Burns. I really hope they're not comatose.
Oh boy, yeah, they might need to check in and get some alcohol toxicity tested there, David. Congratulations on
Thanks, guys.
And we look forward to seeing you when we head off to Oulton Park. That was David Burns, third place. Oh, and it looks like we got fifth place joining us. Jeff Randall has caught up with DJ.
Indeed, I have, Jeff. A fifth place around a tricky circuit like this. That has got to feel pretty darn good.
Oh, what a race. What a race. That was some hot work there for sure. Wow. Yeah. I mean, any fifth place in this league, and you're going to be pretty chuffed, to be fair. But Philip, different planet again. I don't know where he gets his pace from, but boy, oh boy, he is quick. And Mark, awesome. Just great to be able to keep up with David and Simon for most of the race. Loved it.
I mean, it was a thrilling race to watch. And I have to ask you, what was sort of your approach coming into it? Were you on a little bit more of a, let's just let this race develop and I'm not going to push too hard? Or were you in full attack mode that entire time?
Probably 99%. If you go on full attack mode at Knockhill, I think you just fall off the track. So 99%. And just trying to keep it as safe as possible. Ended up with about 15x on that, so was pushing hard, but was more conscious of not having a moment over that bump of curb that's the chicane there. But it's a cracking race. So bring it on. Let's do it again.
Well, indeed. I mean, we head to another sort of classic club circuit in Oulton Park next. How do you think that'll go?
I think it's going to be very much of the same. There's not a lot of room around there. There's not a lot of space to overtake. So I think it's certainly going to favour the quicker guys because it's not going to be too drafty.
Well, I know I am very much looking forward to it. Anybody you want to thank for this top 5 run here today at Knockhill?
Yeah, of course, you guys for doing what you do. It's a cracking job. Thank you, guys. And Remco for putting this whole thing on. Fabulous. Looking forward to next time.
We look forward to seeing you, Jeff. That was Jeff Randall, your 5th place finisher here today. Joe?
That's going to wrap us up. So before we take off, we want to once again mention to check out our sponsor, the Majors Garage. Use the discount code MajorsGSRC for 10% off. There's a link in the description below. Make it nice and easy to apply that. And we want to thank the Absolute Beginners League for bringing us back for another season of coverage. Also, thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music music. See the screen for more of her work. And thanks to the team today, DJ, Ryan, and Dougie. You can find more info about GSRC at globalsimracingchannel.com or through our social media. Check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storenvy.com. There's a link down in the description below. If you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. The next round is going to be Oulton Park, Sunday, February 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern, but it's the Foster's version. It's a much shorter version. They're almost akin to what we saw today with Knock Hill. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out. Mark them down on your calendar. Next one up for today is a new one. It's the Sunday's Drivers' Cup at Silverstone at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tune in for the season opener for that one. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.